What is up, guys? And today we're talking about that man, John Scott. Lots to say about him, man. So last night, in case you didn't know, was the NHL All-Star Game, and I usually do try to watch the All-Star Game because I don't watch a lot of hockey. I do like hockey. I just don't. I only watch really around playoff and the All-Star Game. Those really. Now sometimes I do watch Arizona games, but other than that, and it's come to my attention that the fans, love them or hate them, the fans, my, uh, okay, so here's what happened. John Scott, this per se nobody, I'm not saying that he was, but I'm just saying, this per se nobody, named John Scott, has been in the NHL for a really long time. Didn't have much points in his NHL career, which is sad because he's actually really good. But after he signed, Arizona signed him to a 1-year contract before they traded him to Montreal. John Scott, who just scored, John Scott signed with Arizona. Well, Arizona signed him to a 1-year deal, and in Arizona, he kind of played, again, like he always does, the enforcer. And what's most funny about it is that for some reason, the fans voted him to be an all-star captain. And when I heard this, I'm like, okay, well, let's check out his resume. So I go and I Google John Scott. And I see that he's not like this. Now, I'm not trying to offend anybody here, because I do like John Scott. Hell, he had hell of a performance last night. But I'm like, okay, how did this guy get captain? He hasn't done much career-wise. But the fans were just like, wanted him. So I'm like, okay, I may not understand, but the fans clearly want him. So I'm sitting there, and the weeks passed, and people are like, John Scott doesn't deserve to be captain of the All-Star team. No, John Scott, no. No for John Scott. This should be somebody else. Like, I can understand where you're coming from, where people are like, John Scott shouldn't be captain. But, I mean, the fans clearly want to see it. And if the fans want to see it, the NHL is most likely going to contribute. Like, because Scott is not a bad player. He just, this was his first NHL All-Star game, and as he said, it's probably going to be his last, because, I mean, because it's like he said, it's most likely going to be his last, but, which kind of does suck, because he isn't a bad player. Oh, crap. Like, by far, he is not a bad player. It was interesting to see this guy who hasn't really had, like, this all-star career be an all-star captain. Like, look who he was going against for captains. He was captaining against Patrick Kane. And holy crap, did Patrick Kane get booed out of that building. Jaromir Jagr. And who was the other one? Can't remember. Who was the Central's captain? I can't remember. Anyway, but Scott was against at least two All-Stars. If you remember the captain for the Central, please tell me. No, Kane was Central. Atlantic. Who was Atlantic's captain? Because Jagr was Central. No, not Central. The other one. Metropolitan. No. Metropolitan, I'm thinking I don't know whose captain is. Atlantic was Yager. Pacific was Scott, and the other one was who's Metropolitans though? It was supposed to be Ovechkin. I don't know who ended up being captain. If you remember, if you know, put it down in the comments below. I don't remember. But like John Scott, you know, he just seemed to really enjoy himself. And like leading up, he got sent down to the minors. He got sent down to Springfield, which, in case you don't know, is Arizona's minor league. That last year it was Portland, but now it's Springfield. Anyway, confusing, I know. He gets called down. Everybody's like, "Well, what does this mean for All-Star captain?" And I was like, "Okay, well, you know, Scott's captain. Does this mean he's not going to be captain, and like somebody else is going to be captain for this Pacific?" And I'm sitting there and I'm just like watching as it develops, and then one day I come home and it's like John Scott's been traded. And I was like, "What? No, he can't be traded unless it's to another Pacific Division team." Instead, he goes over to the Atlantic, Yager's territory, and he gets traded to the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm like, okay, what does this mean for his captaincy? And for a while, nobody knew if he was going to be captain or not because of the trade. And I'm like, well, that's kind of going to be crappy for him because, you know, the fans wanted to see it. Just imagine how many boos it's going to freaking get if John Scott don't go to no All-Star game. And Scott, you know, he just kind of stayed quiet about this, you know, not because, you know, he's like, well, what am I in the spotlight kind of thing. I mean, he does deserve it, but, nonetheless, he's kind of like, well, okay. And with all this, Scott just kind of stayed quiet. Scott just stayed quiet, and he did address the media a few times, like once before the All-Star game, I think. Like once, and that was when he was in St. John's, which is Montreal's AHL team. Oh, you know, and then a few days or weeks later, it's like John Scott will be All-Star captain, and I'm like, okay, good for this guy. Let's see what he can do. Skills competition comes. He goes for the hardest shot, 95 miles per hour, which is not bad. But, you know, Shea Weber defended his title with Zdeno Chara holding the record with 109 point something. Or something like that. I don't quite know his record. If you know Zdeno Chara's record, again, comment. But and Scott literally took a picture of the media because this is all new to him. He's not used to all this exposure, right? And for years he's been said that he doesn't belong in the NHL because he's kind of the old-fashioned way. He isn't this new fashion kind of player. And he represents the old fashion of like the enforcer role, and you basically I'll play 5 minutes of ice time. If I score, I score, but I'm gonna protect my stars. He plays that role. Like if you tell him to protect his stars, he's gonna go protect his stars. So for example, who would he protect in he would have protected Vermette and Domi, Duclair, Ekman Larson, even though Larson can probably hit for himself, but you know, he'd just be kind of enforcing and protecting his stars. San Jose, same thing, like Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Plawowski. In Buffalo, I don't think Buffalo had many big stars back when he was in Buffalo. But whoever their big stars were back when he was in Buffalo. In Chicago, he would have protected Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews. Like, you know, John Scott played the enforcer. And skills competition comes. He just enters a few skills competition, wearing a genetic all-star jersey because he technically wasn't a major roster at the moment. He was still down in the AHL in St. John's. But minutes before he did get traded, he was called up. I was like, okay, good for him. Because I didn't see the trade news right away. I saw that John Scott got called up. I was like, okay, awesome. Good for him. Scott got traded. I was like, oh, okay. Well, crap. Then yesterday, All-Star game comes. Right, he's just enjoying himself. He's just enjoying himself, and like, he's enjoying himself. His family's enjoying it. Nashville is freaking cheering him. They're giving him standing ovations. He steps onto the ice in the second game. Anytime he stepped onto the ice, MVP, MVP, and I'll get to that a little later. And he was just so over with the crap. Like, everybody loved him. And I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, holy crap, watching the All-Star game. So, the first game starts. If I do recall, who are they playing? Were they playing this Central? Yeah. Central Division, up 1-1, 1-0. Brett Burns, shoots it, or passes it, Scott with the tip in, and holy crap, John Scott. In the interview, in post-interview, he was like, well, I was trying to ride my stick, but instead, what I did was, I did the Ty Domi ride stick, but instead I did the PK Subban sweeping the ice, and, my God, it was amazing. He doesn't get to celebrate that much. He was all smiles, and, hey, I just wanted to kind of stop talking about John Scott here for a second. Tyler Seguin. The broadcasters asked him to do on-ice commentary, right? And he's going, and he's like, Tyler Seguin, he's got the puck. He shoots. Oh, he misses. He's in behind the net. Somebody shoots it. It misses him. It misses the net, and almost hits him. He's like, oh, shit. And, just like, oh, Seguin, you're fired. You can't say on the air. And it was just funny. Anyway, back to the man we're talking about here, Mr. John Scott. And Scott, okay, he gets his first goal. And everybody's, cheering him. They're cheering him so hard. And then, Patrick Kane has the puck, right? Scott, he checks Patrick Kane. And then, a little later in the game, a little later in that shift, Patrick Kane would score. John Scott would go over, drop his gloves, and pretend to fight him. And Patrick Kane's kind of just rolling along with it. They're, fighting. And they're laughing, the whole time. Scott's laughing the whole time. And smiling. And, he was like... And then, later in the game, Scott gets a breakaway. He's going in. And I'm like, oh my God, breakaway. Breakaways are a man's best opportunity. He goes, he top shelves it like he's a freaking sniper. And I'm like, that'd be John Scott. Sits on the bench. Okay, so he goes on the bench. He's getting interviewed. Taylor Hall's sitting beside him, right? The interviewer's in between him and Taylor Hall. And he's talking, and they're throwing a towel in the background. And Scott's like, it feels great to have these 2 goals. And he's like, it's more than I've scored in my last 200 games. And this guy's played 285 career games, right? And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this guy right here, man. This guy right here. He's just having a fun time, and I don't blame him, the All-Star game isn't supposed to be that serious. I mean, heck, a few years ago, we seen Ovechkin wearing a cowboy hat, having 2 sticks in his hand, doing some sort of skills competition thing. So, the All-Star game isn't that serious, but it is at the same time, right? It's a serious part of the NHL, but, the people there are so lighthearted. And it's funny, right? And John Scott, he's talking. Taylor Hall comes over. Give this guy a contract extension right now. And I'm like, well, hey, man, John Scott's been doing so much. And The broadcasting brought this up enough. He just needed one assist, and he would have had the Gordie Howe hat trick. In case, for those of you who don't know what the Gordie Howe hat trick is, a goal, a fight, and an assist. You know, it's pretty funny, and I'm sitting there like, huh, that's clever. It's clever. I love it. Ah! Failed off a one-timer. And then, okay. So, his team wins 9-6, if I do recall the number. So, Yager's team. It's Yager's team versus Scott's team. Two guys right here, right? Yager, oldest man in the NHL to still play, and the oldest All-Star captain, entering his 10th All-Star game. John Scott, a 6'4" build, or something like that. I think that's what they said, 6'4". First All-Star game, and he's playing. He's just playing his heart out, man. Corey Perry scores. Stays 1-0. He gets $10,000. The winner gets $1 million. The winning team gets $1 million, $10,000 for each player. Now, for some, like rookies, like or people who don't make a lot of money, like Goudreau, who was on his team. Goudreau here is like he's got a lot. That's a lot of money for him, especially for somebody like John freaking Scott, whose wife is expecting twins, and they already have 2 daughters. Okay, so 4 children, and he's talking about getting a new car. Yeah, that 10,000 will get you a new car, Mr. Scott. Anyway, game ends. Your votes for MVP. John Scott wasn't even on the ballot. And people are like, John voting for John Scott. And I'm like, this is amazing. You boo Patrick Kane. You cheer this guy who's in his first All-Star game. And there's a lot of firsts in that game. Ben Bishop. Corey Schneider. I'm not sure about Goudreau. I think that was his first. Detroit's rookie. I forget his name. Those are just a few of the rookies. Or a few of the first-time All-Stars games. And Scott not believing this. Like, when they announced who the MVP was, Brett Burns goes, and he's like, it is you. And Scott's like, me? Like, pointing his glove, like, me? You mean me? I'm the All-Star MVP. Like, it's just amazing to see what he did. Like, I can't explain this enough. Like, I do like John Scott. I was rooting for Scott. I'm like, okay, this guy. Let's see him score. I want to see this guy score. We've seen him score. First shift. First shot. First All-Star game. First goal. It's this whole meme thing now, and I have it. It's awesome. Do you think Scott's getting all this recognition? And somebody made this NHL 17 cover of John Scott doing his goal celebration. And I'm thinking, yes, this, my God, this is awesome. But all in all, Nashville was really excited to see John Scott. And really, how can you blame them? Scott, heck, I didn't know too much about John Scott before. But then I kind of watched videos and I researched about him. People have been saying he doesn't belong in the NHL, you know? To basically say, F you, I'm All-Star captain, must have felt great for him. And another thing, to also say, I'm the All-Star MVP in my first All-Star game. That must have had to feel good. Don't get me wrong, that must be a great feeling. Like, congratulations, John Scott. Hopefully you do great in Montreal. You did get traded from Arizona, which sucks. Come on, Arizona. Why'd you trade him? Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at you there. Well, I'm looking at you over there, Coyotes. And John Scott was a good sport throughout this. social media exploded when he was crowned MVP. Everybody, hockey teams, the Edmonton Oilers even turned on their own player in Taylor Hall, saying, "Yeah, sorry, Taylor, we voted for John Scott." Hashtag John Scott for MVP. And Taylor Hall says, "You should have been voting for him the whole time." Taylor Hall, man, what a great sport. The man had, I think, like 2 goals. Him and Goudreau, they were consistent that night. But no, all in all, great All-Star game last night. One of the best I've ever seen. Except for maybe all the music performances. I found there was way too many. Like, people sang 5 songs before the game actually started. And it was 2 in between the Central and Pacific. And then 2 before the Atlantic and Pacific did battle. All in all, John Scott's team was the winning team. It must feel good to be John Scott right now. Congratulations, John. And I hope you really, really do good the rest of your NHL career. I'll be watching. I won't be watching Montreal games, but I'll be watching highlights. I'll be making sure, if you are mentioned in any shape or form, positively, I'll be like, good for you, Scott. John Scott will forever be the 2016 NHL All-Star Game MVP. I've been your host, Andrew. There will be more than one video because I have some opinions I have to address. Some things that have blown up over social media have kind of happened over the past week that I'd like to touch about. I'd like to touch base about and give my opinion on. This one was really important to me, so I'm doing it first. But no, you know. John Scott, good game, hopefully. He can do stuff like that more often, and I hope you had a great All-Star game. John Scott, 2016 MVP. Just got a good ring to it. Boy.